Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Sutara Sutta Sri Srimad. The Divine Grace of our Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Gaur Premanandi. All glory to some of the devotees. All glory to some of the devotees. All glory to some of the devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. First reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. For weeks, Giriraj and his political acquaintance, Mr. Rajda, had spoken about arranging a meeting between Srila Prabhupada and India's new Prime Minister, Morarji Desai. When it was brought before Srila Prabhupada, the crucial question was whether Srila Prabhupada would consider going to see the Prime Minister somewhere in the city. But that is not respectful, said Srila Prabhupada. Then he does not know how to honor a saintly person. We read about that yesterday in Krishna book, Romaharshan Sutta. He didn't know how to honor a saintly person. What to speak of a saintly person? He didn't know how to honor the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balaramji. And so as a result, he had to forfeit his life. Useless to meet if he has no respect for a saintly person. If he thinks he is greater than a saintly person, then the visit is useless. Yes, then the meeting will start on the wrong foot, said Tamal Krishna. He has to come see you, Srila Prabhupada. There are so many examples in the Shastra of big personalities coming to see saintly persons. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused to see the king of Orissa, said Prabhupada. What to speak of going there? Prabhupada explained that he did not require anything from the Prime Minister, but for the benefit of the human society, he could suggest some things to him. He said that it was a fact that sometimes, when in difficulty, a saintly person could approach a king. He gave the example of Lord Chaitanya's devotee Gopinath Pattanayaka, and how the devotees asked Lord Chaitanya to intervene to save him. But Lord Chaitanya showed that it was a difficult job to approach such royal persons. With these guidelines in mind, Giriraj pursued the idea of a meeting. On the evening of May 5th at about midnight, Giriraj received a phone call from Mr. Rajda. The meeting with Morarji Desai was fixed for 7:30 the next morning. The Prime Minister was only going to be in Bombay for 1 or 2 days, be staying at his son's flat on Marine. Raj wanted to consult Prabhupada to see if certain leading disciples should go. Not wanting to disturb Prabhupada, he tiptoed into Prabhupada's hallway and peeked into the room. Prabhupada was awake, sitting at his translating table, working. He looked up, saw Giriraj, and motioned him to come forward. Srila Prabhupada said, Giriraj, I am very sorry to disturb you at this hour, but I just received a phone call from Ratan Singh Rajda. Giriraj related that Morarji Desai was ready to meet them at his residence the next morning. Srila Prabhupada explained that he wanted to see if Morarji Desai would have been willing to come and meet him in Hare Krishna land. It's not that I'm proud, he said, that I can't go meet him in his place. But unless his mood is respectful, there is no use. Prabhupada said that this was the test of whether the Prime Minister had a proper attitude. He agreed that Tamal Krishna Goswami and Giriraj should go ahead and meet the Prime Minister. Giriraj says, this meeting with Srila Prabhupada was one of the most intense and unique that I ever had. Although I was able to be in his presence so many times, we were alone together at midnight. Everyone else was asleep. All the lights were out, and it was just the two of us in this big room. He was sitting behind his marble translating desk, and I was sitting on the floor at his feet. Has everyone been to Prabhupada's room in Bombay? You've been, Arjun, and then? How about you, Sachin? Not been yet? Beautiful room. Matanga, you've been to Prabhupada's room in Bombay? Not yet? Big room. Beautiful desk there still, where Prabhupada would sit and translate. You have to go and see to appreciate. Giriraj says, Prabhupada, I am sorry that I had to disturb you like this in the middle of the night. Srila Prabhupada said, that's all right. Actually, with this sickness, I cannot sleep at night. Even if I want to, I cannot sleep. Due to this illness, I cannot eat also. I am such an old man. There is no question of sex life, and there is no question of defense either. So I guess I am liberated. Prabhupada had a very cutting-edge humor. Of course, I knew that Srila Prabhupada was liberated, not because of bodily circumstances, as he was humbly saying, but because he was in transcendental consciousness. He was always up at night translating, not because he was sick and couldn't sleep, but out of devotion to his Guru Maharaj and to Lord Krishna. But it was a very wry, humorous remark, and I felt very charmed by the whole meeting, and offered my obeisances and went back to sleep. The next morning, Tamal Krishna Goswami and Giriraj prepared well in advance for their meeting with the Prime Minister. Before leaving, they asked Prabhupada what books that they should give him. Prabhupada replied, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna book, and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. In Hindi, asked Giriraj. Prabhupada frowned. No, English. The devotees went in their car to pick up Mr. Rajda at his flat. From there, they would go to the apartment on Marine Drive, where Prime Minister Desai was staying. Marine Drive, everybody knows, is the most prominent area in Bombay, overlooking the Arabian Sea. Beautiful area. Very beautiful. High towers. You look at, we used to go do life membership there and go to these apartments there. Big, big men. Anyone who lives there has to have some means, not for the poor people in the slums of. After Giriraj had been ringing the front doorbell for about 20 minutes, Mr. Rajda finally appeared. He said that they had to wait just 5 more minutes while he continued dressing and eating. Unfortunately, by the time they reached the apartment on Marine Drive, it was 8 o'clock. They were 30 minutes late. As soon as they entered, the Prime Minister said, "You are very late." He was already meeting with some other people and said that he would see the devotees for a few minutes. He repeated that he had been waiting since 7:25. The devotees remained silent, not knowing what to say. They apologized and gave him Prabhupada's books. Mr. Desai didn't say much and quickly excused himself, going back to his meeting with others. When the devotees returned to the temple, Prabhupada eagerly asked what happened. He was very upset to hear that they had been late. Very bad, he said. He remarked that Moraji Desai was known for his punctuality. They had missed a good opportunity, he said, by their misbehavior. When the devotees explained that Mr. Rajda had made them late, Prabhupada asked for a more detailed report. The devotees said the main thing Moraji Desai wanted to know was why they were late. Did you tell him that Ratan Singh Rajda made you late? Asked Prabhupada. Giriraj and Tamal Krishna shook their heads. Prabhupada became disgusted and said, "Why did you not say that he made you late? That you were on time, but he made you late? I know that you are thinking that he is our friend and that you didn't want to embarrass him in front of the Prime Minister. But now the whole thing is spoiled." Feeling very foolish and ashamed, the devotees sat silently before Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada reflected for a moment. Anyway, he said, these men will never change their views. Srila Prabhupada occasionally talked of traveling to a place better for his health. It was May and Bombay was hot. Soon the monsoons would come. He had considered going to Kashmir because the air and water were reputedly good for health, but no suitable accommodations could be found there, and the weather was too cool. And one day he received a visit from Sriman Narayan, the former governor of Gujarat. "You should take care of your health," said Sriman Narayan. "I hope you get better." "Oh, this is just an old machine," Prabhupada laughed. "The more you cure it, the more it gets worse. But my work never stops. That keeps on going. My main work is to write these books, and that is going on." Several other Indian guests were present, and they at once began recommending good places for health: Srinagar, Kashmir, Dehradun, Mussoorie, Simla, Hardwar. "Yes, the water in Hardwar is good," said Sriman Narayan, "but better than that would be in Rishikesh, where the Ganges flows. Whatever places are on the bank of the Ganges, the water will be very good, pure Ganges water." Srila Prabhupada took these remarks seriously and turned to his disciples. "Yes, then we can go to Rishikesh. This time is very good. Let us arrange for that." From that moment, going to Rishikesh became a definite plan, and Prabhupada prepared to leave Bombay within a week. Srila Prabhupada ki. The next chapter is chapter 8. I have done my part. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 13, the appearance of Lord Varaha. Text 1. We need to adjust the schedule also because there were so many. But I asked Chandrasekhar Maharaj and said that he left off last verse, chapter 12. Shri Sukha Uvacha Nishamya Vachang Vadato Nishamya Vachang Vadato Mune Punya Hamam Nripa Mune Punyatamang Nripa Bhuya Paprichikoravyo Bhuya Paprichikoravyo Vasudeva Katadrita Vasudeva Katadrita. Please chant. Shri Sukha Vacha Nishamya Vachang Vadato Mune Punyatamang Nripa Bhuyak Paprachchakoravyo Vasudeva Katadritaha. Shri Sukha Vacha Nishamya Vachang Vadato Munek Punyatamang Nripa Bhuyak Paprachchakoravyo Vasudeva Katadritaha. Matangaji. Shri Sukha Vacha Nishamya Vachang Vadato Mune Punyatamang Nripa Bhuya Paprachchakoravyo Vasudeva Katadritaha. Ladies. Shri Sukha Vacha Nishamya Vachang Vadate Mune Punyatamam Nripa Bhuya Paprachchakoravyo Vasudeva Katadritaha. Shri Sukha Vacha Nishamya Vachang Vadato Mune Punyatamam Nripa Muya Papracha Kauravyo Vasudeva Kata Jataha Sri Sukovacha. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Nishamya, after hearing, Vacham, talks, Vadata, while speaking, Mune, of Maitreya Muni, Punyatamam, the most virtuous, Nripa, O king, Bhuya, then again, Paprachta, inquired, Kauravya, the best among the Kurus, Vidura, Vasudeva Kata, topics on the subject of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Topics on the subject of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Adrita, one Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, after hearing all these most virtuous topics from sage Maitreya, Vidura inquired further on the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he adored to hear. Please repeat. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, after hearing all these most virtuous topics from the sage Maitreya, Vidura inquired further on the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he adored to hear. Purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The word adhitaha is significant because it indicates that Vidura had a natural inclination for hearing the transcendental message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was never fully satisfied, though continuing to hear those topics. He wanted to hear more and more so that he could be more and more blessed by the transcendental message. Om Jnana Tamrandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chaksur Amlatamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangung Langhai Tegaram Yakipatamaham Bande Shigurum Dinatanam. Translation again. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, after hearing all these most virtuous topics from the sage Maitreya, Vidura inquired further on the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he adored to hear. So this is we can see from this hearing process, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, that simply by hearing, one's taste for hearing increases automatically. Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. So this is a natural process. It's not something one has to artificially pretend. Just like Prabhupada was describing, and we were watching the lecture on Henry Street, where he used the example of the man infected by jaundice. A man infected by jaundice, he tastes sugar candy as very bitter. And this is one of the symptoms, besides the other obvious symptoms, that one's taste for sweet things, everything tastes bitter. But the cure for jaundice, one of the cures, is to take this sugar candy. What do they call it? Misri? Rock candy. So by gradually taking the cure, the natural sweetness returns. It is not that the sugar has not been sweet. It is always sweet. But one's condition becomes cured. So this is the analogy. So that when one is in the beginning, such topics may not be very attractive or appealing because one doesn't have pure consciousness. So by following this process, chitte te kuriya aikya, especially on today is Father's Day. So every day we're chanting, but the meaning should become more apparent, more reverential, not just that we repeat these things in some mechanical fashion. Because anywhere one goes, if he goes to a church, he goes to a mosque, goes to a synagogue, every day there's some prayers that they're chanting. And many times we see that this is just repetition, and there is no change of consciousness. So here specifically it says, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Kuriya Akya. That from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master, these words are changing one's consciousness. So therefore, if one's consciousness is being changed, then the sweetness of these topics, of these virtuous topics, becomes more and more relishable. Otherwise, one will simply, at some point, he will realize that he has no taste. He has no taste. Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. One can hear Vasudeva Kata, but if he doesn't have the taste, then he will become tired. He will think that, why am I listening to this? What is the purpose? Therefore, so many so-called scholars, they classify this Krishna Katha simply as Prabhupada used to put it, mythology. And mythology automatically is in the realm of fiction. Some stories meant to explain certain things, embellished for less intelligent persons because they cannot understand how the cosmology, whether it's Vedic or otherwise, they make some explanations in order to satisfy this primitive understanding of why the sun rises, why the sun sets, why the moon appears and disappears, so many things like that. But if one is to read, if one is to understand, just like this Srimad Bhagavatam, in minute detail, the cosmic creation is explained. But if someone doesn't want to hear, it's like a man pretending to be asleep. You cannot make him wake up. Naturally, if a man is sleeping and he hears some sound, you clap your hands, he wakes up spontaneously. But a person pretending to be asleep, no, you cannot. He's pretending, already pretending. He's not asleep. He wants to pretend not to hear. So Prabhupada used this analogy, and it's very appropriate. Because there are many people, you go and you approach them, and they give some answer, quick response, especially when we used to preach to the life members in India. And what do they say? It says, I'm already knowing Krishna. I'm already knowing Krishna. But yes, they know Krishna as some from their childhood and being retold by their parents or grandparents in some fairy tale manner. But this is not real Krishna. Now, real Krishna is appearing in the hearts and minds of those who have qualified. What does that say? What does Krishna say? Nehabhaka? No, not that. What's that verse? It'll come to me. But basically, we know that Krishna is never revealed to those who are mudhas and naradamas. And this is, he reserves the right. Just like when you go into a store, sometimes you'll see a sign that says, "We reserve the right, who will serve." Sometimes it says, "No shirt, no shoes, no service." So Krishna also has that. He doesn't have to reveal himself to anyone, especially to those who are envious. So this is the process by which one becomes free from envy, this submissive oral reception. And pure devotional service, not adulterated, not with some motive. Anya bilasata sunyam jnana karma dinavatam anukulyena krishnanushivanam bhakti uttamam. It has to be like that, without motivation. Otherwise, if it's just some mercantile exchange, what is that famous example? When after the Lord Nrsingadev killed Hiranyakashipu, he wanted to give some benediction to Prahlad Maharaj. And Krishna is always looking to benedict the devotees. And so he asked him that he can give him whatever he wants, a kingdom even greater than his father's, who had already conquered all the demigods and occupied the throne of heaven. So he was offering him the most opulent position, the most exalted position. And Prahlad Maharaj, 5-year-old boy, what did he say? He said, "My dear Lord, I do not want anything from you. I did not come to you like, what's that term? Banik. And some mercantile exchange, that you do something for me, I do something for you. No. He said, I am not in that category. That this is I simply, he said, if you want to do one thing for me, please liberate my father. So even though his father tried to kill him on so many occasions, not just once, repeatedly, still, he said, if you could just deliver my father. So the Lord replied, what to speak of your father? His father, his father, his father, 7 generations in the past and 7 generations in the future, all liberated. So this is another, not an incentive, but this, the Lord is so kind that even if the devotee is engaged in his devotional service and doesn't want anything, automatically his whole family is benedicted. The whole family, without any separate endeavor. So this is wonderful. So the devotee is not trying to get anything from the Lord. He doesn't care for anything. We see Srila Prabhupada, he was not looking for any remuneration. I've told many times, that when Prabhupada was on the planet, every temple would send a small stipend every month for Prabhupada's maintenance and travel. So how much do you think every temple sent? There were 108 temples at the time. So what was the amount? Matanga, take a guess. What did the temple send to Prabhupada? How much? No, 50% went for books and temple construction. Prabhupada's personal maintenance. Every temple had a responsibility to pay for Prabhupada's personal maintenance. $15 a month. $15. Prabhupada could have asked for any amount, and we would have given. So this is the mood of the pure devotee. He's not taking from Krishna. And this was our obligation. This is just, and it's also not even that he needed this $15, but we understand that the devotee is responsible to give the spiritual master dakshin. And in this way, every temple gave every month like this. Very simple, nothing elaborate. Of course, here, Prabhupada sitting in the big temple in Bombay. I remember Toshan Krishna relating to me the story of how all the money that we had collected on the subways for various projects, we were collecting to save for Gita Nagari, and then we were collecting to save for the building on 55th Street. Every time we would collect a big amount, Prabhupada would take it for Bombay or for Vrindavan, some project like that. Because that was his prerogative. And we would begin to collect again. But nothing for him personally. But by the efforts of the devotees in New York, this big building in Bombay and the temple in Vrindavan were built. And plus, we still bought the farm, Gita Nagari, and bought the big building on 55th Street. The devotees were so happy to go and collect every day for Srila Prabhupada. There was no thinking that this is such a big endeavor, so hard, we have to go out every day. No. With love. Simply by love. And by that effort, so much, you see the devotees who were there, now they're all in positions where they have served the society in so many valuable ways. And how did they get to that position? Simply by going out and distributing books for Srila Prabhupada, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam class and Bhagavad Gita class. Because the Supreme Lord favored them by their sincere surrender. It is automatic. It is not contrived. So there are verses that describe how this process takes place. That Prabhupada was saying, it's an old machine. So when you have an old machine, an old mind, things do not happen spontaneously. You have to think hard. Where is that verse that you want to quote? But in any case, we understand that just like vidya and vairagya, these things also happen. And when one tad vidyanartam sagarum eva bigat chet samit pani shrotiyam brahmanistam, that is, by serving the spiritual master, one gets this benediction. It is not, we're not seeking a benediction, but automatically Krishna is awarding from within the heart. Just like this verse 15:15. I remember just the other day, the Gurukul kids, they were here from traveling in the bus, the Kishore Yatra. And such a big temple and so many places and so many people, and kids were losing things left and right. So Jai Shri Radhe, one of their chaperone, said, you have to remember this verse. What's that verse, 15:15? Sarvasya chaham riddhi sani vishto mataksmatir ganamaponam cha. Krishna says, Vedesya sarva aham eva veda vedanta krit veda vedeva. Lord is situated in the heart, and from him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So if you remember that verse, and you remember that Krishna is a source of remembrance and forgetfulness, then you'll remember where you left that bead bag or that chadar or whatever it is you lost. So Krishna is the source of all remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So all these things are there. We're going now into this appearance of Lord Varaha. And for one who has developed even a slight taste, he's relishing the pastimes of the Lord. He's not thinking that, oh, this is just another story. No. It is wonderful to hear how the Lord has appeared in these various incarnations for his particular purposes. That yada yada yadamasya glanir bhavati bharata. To please the devotees, just to please the devotees, he's appearing like this. and simultaneously to vanquish the demons, as an example, because these demons are actually devotees. You know, Haranyaksha, Haranyakashipu, this is Jai and Vijay, the gatekeepers. They're great devotees. They're not demons, but they take birth as demons, and that's another interesting story. Because they wanted to go back to their posts very quickly. So they told the Lord, we'll take birth 3 times as demons, instead of just hanging around for 7 or how many births in the family of devotees. Well, they were so eager that they would take birth as demons. And in those pastimes, they pleased the Lord because he could exercise his chivalrous mood, his fighting mood, which cannot be there in Vaikuntha, cannot be there any place except here in Boma Leela. So everything has some special transcendental meaning, and these are not just stories. But only the devotees have access to the meaning behind. Just like sometimes they have movies, and nobody can understand what the movie was about. Has some trick ending. And then the person who made the movie, he has to explain it. Because everyone is sitting there wondering, what was that? So only Krishna, he has all these pastimes. But then again, he comes in the form of the great sages in his incarnations as Veda Vyasa to explain them so that we have the benefit. We don't have to guess, why did Krishna come as a boar? No. Why did he have that Leela? So he could extricate the earth from a filthy place, just like the boars do? No. Everything is very nice and very sweet. Only Krishna can do these things. And the devotees relish it. And it increases their love and affection. And that love and affection in the heart replaces all the dirty things. And that's the key. Tada rajas tamo bhavo kama lobha dayaschaye. Cheta ete anarvidam stitvam sattvam prasidati. All the dirty things in the heart are automatically cleansed. And that Prabhupada used to give that analogy of pouring a clear, clean liquid into a glass filled with dirty things. Eventually the dirty things are displaced. Right? Eventually you just keep pouring in Krishna Katha, and eventually all the dirty things in the heart and the mind are gone. It's an automatic process. So sweet. Just hear. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smarnam. No extraneous endeavor needed. Such a simple, automatic process. But still we think, no, let me go and try to understand some other purport, some other meaning, something that suits my philosophical proclivity. This is not a good thing to try to make oneself appear to be more, how can you say, intellectual or intelligent. Prabhupada used to use a term for those who would make such endeavors. He said, over-intelligent. He said, over-intelligent. And don't be over-intelligent. Krishna is giving clear meaning. Why do we have to try to screw something out artificially? It's not necessary. If one is actually hearing with a pure heart, then everything will be revealed automatically. He doesn't have to use his fertile brain to try to manifest something which, what do they say? Try to read between the lines, or, this is a unnecessary endeavor. Everything is clear. The words of the spiritual master are clear. And if one takes them as such, then his understanding will be clear. Yeah. But if he tries to think, no, well, anyway, we don't want to do such things. One should always remain a fool before the spiritual master. This is such an important point. All right? Lord Chaitanya himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, specifically makes this mention of this. with Sartre Sarvabhauma in that discourse. Otherwise, how can we understand that the Supreme Lord says that I should remain a fool before my spiritual master? Because this is the safe position. Everything will be revealed automatically. This is the point. I am not acquiring knowledge. Knowledge is being revealed. If one is thinking I'm acquiring knowledge, then already he's made a miscalculation. This knowledge it's called self-realization. Atma Tattva Gyan. It is being revealed. All knowledge is there. The constitutional position of the living entity is Sat Chit Ananda. Everything is there. Just like the Supreme Law, but in minute quantity. But to whatever extent necessary, it is revealed, whether it is great or small, according to one's yeya tama prapadyante. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So we shouldn't think that, I have to study so hard, I have to do it. No, we study just to please the spiritual master, that we're not being idle. And so therefore Prabhupada instituted things like Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, that one should acquire certain theosophical understanding in order to carry himself in a debate, if necessary. If necessary. Otherwise, we should avoid such things. They're simply a waste of time. Most people, they want to hear themselves talk. And they ask such foolish topics. Because the slightest thing, and they reveal themselves by their foolish questions. And that should be a clue just to stop the conversation, give that person a book, or give him some prasadam. He's not yet ready, not eligible. So what to speak, of, therefore, that's why this Yuga Dharma, Harinam Sankirtan is so important. Because this holy name alone can render all benediction. And therefore Lord Chaitanya has stressed this. Because you have hundreds and millions of names, like Krishna and Govinda. So we have to have faith in that. That if we're chanting these names, if we're propagating faithfully the mission of Lord Chaitanya, following the footsteps of our acharyas, that automatically the result will be that we do not need to concoct anything or make something different, some changes. Prabhupada said this is our defect, that we're always trying to change. No, we don't see anything changing. We see everything being, if we're following Lord Chaitanya, then what can go wrong? What can possibly go wrong? So therefore we should continue this Yuga Dharma Sankirtan in every town and village, wherever. And for us, that means in every street all over New York City. Washington Square, Union Square, Times Square, all the squares. It's very nice. Krishna has made all these places just for us to chant, very favorably. Because people are gathering. And so we don't have to do anything. We just have to go sit down and chant, and they're coming. There was a problem when he was chanting in Tompkins Square, the first square. This is the Adi Square, the original square, Tompkins Square. Right, Matunga? I was reading about Matunga last night. Great sage Matunga. And, but this Tompkins Square Park is so important. Just see, Prabhupada simply came, sat down and chanted, and this whole movement started. Because he was following the orders of his spiritual master. So how can we think that by doing anything less, or even anything more? You just simply have to follow. And Prabhupada said that so many times. Anusara and anukara. He said, don't imitate, follow. Don't imitate. Simply follow. Then everything will be successful. And so we have everything right here. We don't have to go anywhere unnecessarily. Simply use the temple as a base. It's like all the soldiers, they stay within the base and then they go out to fight. And then they come back in again to become strong and then again go out. So this is the temple for us. They're just like that. Fortress against Maya. Where we can come, we have Krishna Katha, we have Sadhu Sangha, we have sumptuous prasadam, everything is there in order for us to do our service. There is nothing lacking. There is no lack in Krishna consciousness. But we have to accept it with a little humility. Just like Prabhupada. Well, yeah, we have to accept it with a little humility. And then everything will be successful. So read the verse again. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, after hearing all these most virtuous topics from the sage Maitreya, Vidura inquired further on the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he adored to hear. Any questions? Sachin, any questions? Matungaji, any questions? I think Matanga got his name, his very special name. You know this story, right? Matanga, the sage Matanga. Between Bali and Sugriva, that he offended this sage. He was, Bali was carrying out some, I forget what he was doing exactly, but somehow or other, he contaminated the place of the sage Matanga. So the sage Matanga cursed him that if he would come anywhere near his hermitage, he would die. And therefore, that's why Sugriva could go there and take shelter, because Bali was much stronger than him and chased him everywhere. But because Matanga had cursed Bali, therefore Bali couldn't enter into that area of his hermitage. So Matanga was a very angry sage. Any questions? Any questions? And now let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who can fulfill the desires of everyone just as desires and are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyavacha patitanam pavanebhi Vaishnavo namaha. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi.